Welcome everybody and hello to We Look at Custom Cards in Hearthstone. While Trump is making that 5-star rating for playability and we don't. We just look at the cards for fun. I always looked at custom cards as custom things that you create for fun, for whatever reason that you might add to the game, maybe as a meme, maybe as a good card, maybe just because you didn't know what else to do with your time. So without giving you a rating on how good or bad your card is, we just look at them, think about them, and enjoy our time. We had 180 something submissions, thank you guys for clicking the link and submitting cards. And after going through all of them on stream, I selected the top, a lot of them, for the next couple episodes of Let's Look at Custom Cards with me. I can tell you some cards are really good. Some cards have really good designs and other cards, okay, a lot of them just exist already. We had like one card that is Lothar, but -2 mana, and it was a clown. So thank you for submitting that clown. Appreciate you. Now before you wonder, Solem, are you now a custom Hearthstone man guy that only looks at custom cards? Yesn't and no'n't. Once a week for the next like 4 weeks, we'll have one episode of this, where we look at your card creations, see what you guys come up with, and maybe, if this one goes well, we can make something like a weekly contest at the end of each episode. I just want to do something about Hearthstone that is not just, I sit here, play the game. And with all that talking out of the way, and reminding you guys that you can subscribe and like for free, here's the first card called Spade of Splendor. The idea? Simple. You have seen Sphere of Sapience. A neutral weapon, every class can play it, and you get 4 rerolls. Do you want to draw the card in your deck that you were to draw anyways, or do you not? And Spade of Splendor is similar, but different. This card is just for discover cards. Whenever you discover, you have the options between 3 different cards. You can rediscover, you can refresh your discover. Considering that discover is a fun mechanic that is pretty bad quite often, this card could at least see play in a deck that you play against NPCs, friends, or in memes. I like memes. And Spade of Splendor is a good meme. And I guess if you play the good cards and you play constructed, then maybe getting the better random instead of the bad random is good random. So, yep, random. Following up, we got Massive Corruption for Warlock as a 10 mana spell. It corrupts every card in your deck. And I looked at this card and I was like, so you spend 10 mana, which corrupts every card that is in your hand anyways, but it also corrupts stuff in your deck. If this spell had something like a 8/8 top minion attached to it, so you don't just immediately lose when you play it, you would get +5 Schmingolds, the currency for which I value your cards in. So if you had a minion, +8 Dingolds. Solemn Judgement, that's me. Also reference to this Yu-Gi-Oh card. In Yu-Gi-Oh, when you cast Solemn Judgement, you pretty much ignore whatever your opponent did. It's like you're using an Uno reverse card, toss it onto the enemy's field, and just say, no, undo that please. But imagine this, your opponent plays Zephyrus. No, they don't. I mean, they still summon the body, the 3/2, but they don't have the effect. If the card gets silenced immediately, it just means the better card gets ignored. If we had something like that as a mechanic, which I think will happen eventually, maybe as a secret it makes sense. But for the fact that you have no duplicates in your deck, and it's a Warlock secret, which all doesn't make too much sense, I can just say this one gets 27 Lembolts. Firebending. So on my wall in front of me, if I look right there, I can see a firebender. I can see Zuko because I bought a display, not sponsored, which looks pretty sick. So firebending would be a dual class card for mage and shaman, and here's my question. As you can see, based on the words that are in the cards, in the text there, you discover an overload spell. Mage doesn't have those. So I'm confused why it is a dual class card. I get the whole part where you cast spells as a mage and all that, but what does overload have to do with mage? The most amount of damage you could deal would be 5. When you play Elemental Destruction, that 1 TGT epic spell, which deals 4 to 5 damage, you would discover that card, get it, and also deal 5 damage AoE. We also have a card in the game called Finders Keepers, I think, has a white rabbit, so must be a reference to Alice in Wonderland. We discover an overload spell anyways, but it overloads itself. This spell doesn't overload, deals AoE damage, but it's in most cases just discover a card you don't want to have and deal like 1 or 2 damage. So I think that's fine, just the dual class card is kind of weird. Mage doesn't need to have that, but for Shaman, I would like that. And for that the card deserves 15 Lingolds. Raging Rager. He is raging and he hits the enemy's face, unless the opponent is like, no, and then he hits your face instead, which could happen. Here is my problem with the card. I like Rages because they are great cards, but in order to play this card, despite being a neutral legendary, you have to play Rogue. One of the Rages is in Rogue called Shadow Rager, and in order to summon all the Rages, you kind of need the Shadow Rager. So for the Raging Rager, it could have been a Rogue legendary, and maybe it should also ignore secrets. Because imagine you play that, and then there's like explosive runes, and the opponent is like, no, you don't play that. Overall, great Rager, everybody likes Rages, for that it gets 12 Rages. Molten Mini. Imagine you play the card, you trade into a 1/1 minion and the opponent has another 1/1 minion. What happens? You summon another Molten Mini. I thought if you play this card into file, you clear the entire board. Until I realized that's not how the card works. You just deal 1 damage. It's like Elven Archer as a death rattle, and if you hit the right random, maybe you get another molten mini. The art is great, he looks strong, he looks like he is buff AF, and for that he deserves a spot on the top 7 mini list. So next we have Clumsy Pupil, and when I saw this card live on Twitch, where you can follow too, I thought this one was the best card so far. Here's the reason why. The artwork makes sense. The name makes sense. The effect makes sense. Also, you counter your own spell and you get a buff. That's really good stats for the cost. 3 mana 6/5 is really good, and if you just have a coin, you trade your coin for like 2 bananas by Mukla. If you would have shown me that card in the Scholomance Academy expansion, I would have been like, yeah sure, that's a normal card. That is one of the cards in that set. So for design points, 8.5 out of 9 Hearthstones for you. Next we get Pork, which is random for each randomly random. Then we have Spoiler, which does look like a Mountain Water Warcraft. So it's a 4 mana 4/3, and it buffs all your other minions if you cast a spell last turn, which is not that hard. I thought, because I'm a wild player mostly, when I play against somebody using even Shaman, they have Totemic Might and Totemic Search, and then they have an entire board full of totems, which in Wild, fun fact, is really good. This card makes that even better. So while the stats are fine, and it's a beast in Shaman, and the effect is also fine because you have to cast the spell last turn and think 1 turn ahead, I feel like this could be really broken. When we talked about the card live, Twitch was more like 50-50. They either said the card is terrible or the card is great. So I think that's good design. I give it 4 Rel Robs as my rating. Then we have another Rager card, Ultima Rager. So if you somehow manage to discount your hand 3, 4, 8 times to have an entire board full of Ragers, that is a decent enough effect that you would play it as an OTK. Here are 3 downsides. Number 1, you need to have Ragers on the board. Number 2, it has 1 health. Number 3, he doesn't look evil enough. He looks like a firebender, you know? I thought about the Ultima Rager to be like the Avatar, right? Like an amalgamation of all the Ragers combined. He is more like, oh yeah, sure, I'm evil. But nonetheless, I like that guy. And I rated Ordered Assault. I rated a Pandarian. For a warrior spell, it gives a minion rush, so you can attack immediately, and at the end of your turn you attack again, but random. And this reminded me of Goblin Prank, which is a 2 mana epic spell in Hunter. It also buffs a minion, but your minion dies instead. Ordered Assault seems like a 1 mana spell, maybe. Artwork, nice. Effect, good. Name, also fitting. It gets the award for this card kind of already exists, but better. In my opinion, award. Then we get Ultraxion. If I'm not mistaken, and I might be really wrong here, if so, yeah, happens. This is the original artwork for Malygos, and the Malygos we have in our game is Caligos, and the Caligos we have in our game is also a different dragon. Something confusing like that. We have like 20-something cards in Hearthstone that have a different artwork than the name says. Use Sarah's stats for +1 mana. Whenever a card is played, shuffle a copy of it into a deck. I thought, wow, this card is terrible, because you can just play Archbishop Benedictus to keep the entire enemy's deck. You can play Academic Espionage and Rogue to get something, and then it hit me. Why not just play the game for fun and play the card? I don't need to be a Debbie Downer and be like, nah, this card exists. Nah, the card is funny, I like it, it probably shuffles a bunch of bad cards into your deck. But if you just play for fun anyways and you want to have a cool looking blue dragon, good job with Ultraxion. Obviously, competitively speaking, no, this card is not good. But for fun and against NPCs, sure, why not? Then we get Inkmaster Overdark. It's not Tinkmaster Overspark, different guy. 3 mana 3/3, transform another random minion into a random Rager. I like that card a lot because it's Tinkmaster Overspark, but it also makes Ragers raging and random. There was this one guy in 2015 or 16 that made Shaman a tier 1 deck called Totemic Man. He was able to not just summon a random basic totem, but a random totem, so you could summon a totem golem for example. And that was really strong. If you play Inkmaster Overdark and you get something like a 5/1 Divine Rager, boy that's value. Or you give your opponent a Rager, or if they play Big Priest, they now have a Rager and resurrect the Rager. For that, you get 5 out of 5 Rager points. Then we have Courtiers of Yorkshire Run, better credit discard all spells from your hand, which I think was like, why would you play that card? That seems terrible. And then Spell Burst, cast them with random targets. My first idea was, if you have double Pyroblast in your hand, and double Fireball, and you discard all of those cards, and you somehow then get a spell to your hand, in the exact same turn, so this minion not just dies, and then you cast that spell. On top of all that, you can also then win the 1 in I don't know what chance to hit all spells to the enemy's face. That's an OTK, and that seems so bad, I would like to try it. I'm not sure why it's Spell Burst, maybe they meant to type in Death Rattle, but yeah. Something like that seems like fun. And if not, you just silence that and nothing happens. And for the last card, 7 mana 2/5 start of game. Make all card text unnecessarily overcomplicated. Oh yeah, and here's Striped Simp, I forgot about that. Here's like a random Yu-Gi-Oh card that sees play a lot, Ash Blossom. Do you see how many words are in the effect? That's a lot of words. That is how Yu-Gi-Oh works. And with Yugi staring at you saying, please hit the like button and sub because it's free, I would say, thanks so much for watching. Overall, I would just like to have a random expansion in Hearthstone full of custom cards, just for fun. Maybe just a set of cards you can only use against friends, NPCs, and maybe some tavern brawls. And maybe if you pray hard enough, that might happen. Or it doesn't, probably not. If you want to submit a card as well, I will give you a link next episode. Unless I forget about that, which might happen. But I would like to have something like a form you can fill out once a week, where you submit a card for a specific style, and then we just look at them 1 week after. That sounds like fun, and until then, take care.